A little bit of context as to, what the people in Afghanistan are going through right now?
Well, the people in Afghanistan are suffering in ways that we cannot imagine only by watching what happens at the international airport. People wanting to get out and grabbing onto wheels of airplanes while they're on the tarmac trying to fly, and 5 of them have fallen off and to their own deaths, at least. And then, of course, the chaos that has reigned in the airport for the last many days without being really properly managed, and many more people have died. So that in itself sort of gives you an idea of the fear that people associate with Taliban and their government, because many of them have experienced their rule 20 years ago for 5-6 years in the late 1990s. And that fear, and also their deeds of the last 20 years of terrorizing the population by mass bombings, suicide attacks, and so forth, so that people are really desperate to get out.
I was reading the median age of Afghanistan is like 18 years old, right? It's a very young country.
Yes.
So a lot of these kids really haven't maybe experienced rule under the Taliban. What's your kind of reaction to that? Any insight into
demographic reality in Afghanistan is that somewhere close to 65 to 7% of Afghanistan's current population of estimated between 35 to 40 million are below the age of 25. Below the age of 25. These young people who have gotten now education, aspirations, and commitment to democratic way of life, freedom, liberties, and all the rest, they're the ones who are suffering the most. And amongst them, of course, are the young girls who have also grown up with freedoms that Taliban are telling them, no, it's not going to happen. And the problem also is that these large portion of the Afghan population are excluded from the political process, from political decision-making. That nobody is paying attention to their wishes and their whims, with the exception of one young man in Panjshir province, who is the son of the hero of resistance in Afghanistan, Ahmad Shah Massoud, who had been one of the toughest opponents of Taliban in their last rule, and that he was assassinated 2 days before 9/11 on September 9th in 2001. His son was only 8 years old at the time, 8 or 12, I'm not sure. But now he is in his, I think must have been 8 or 9. Now he is 30 years old. And he is educated in UK, both in military, as well as he has master's degree in I think international relations, political science, and so forth. And he has now organized a defense against the Taliban in his own province, his father's old, place of resistance. And he is now representing the youth, this bulging youth in Afghanistan. And his demands are very simple. He says, I'm willing to negotiate if Taliban are going to agree to a few very simple principles. One, election is going to be the means for choosing the future leader of Afghanistan. Second, the government has to be decentralized, and allowing community self-governance is a principle, so that people at their villages, their districts, their provinces, and so forth, going to be able to elect their own political officers, and also that they should be able to also recruit their own civil servants, instead of everyone being appointed from Kabul by the president, which is basically what the Constitution of Afghanistan calls. Just imagine if during Trump's administration, President Trump had the right to appoint every governor in the United States of America, every judge, every police commander, every military officer, you just name it, everyone. That's the, what would America have been like? And that's the reality that Afghans have lived with for 140 years. And we, and foreigners, foreign countries have supported this regime. And this is what we in fact, supported for the last 20 years, for the last 16 years at least, because we oversaw the current constitution of Afghanistan that was passed in 2004. So it's the wish of the majority of people of Afghanistan, especially the youth, that is being represented by Ahmad Shah Massoud's son, Ahmad Massoud, now in Panjshir. So he is insisting on peaceful resolution if Taliban agree to these conditions. And since Taliban are not likely to agree to this, so the only way out is going to be a prolonged war. This forever war, the meaningless war that Joe Biden has called it, will unfortunately go on because the Taliban are not willing to allow people their freedoms. And I think women and girls are going to be suffering the most. And all of Afghanistan will suffer, but they will suffer more.
Yeah. You don't necessarily have to answer my next question, but what has it kind of been like for you to watch this unfold? Kind of what are the feelings behind watching this?
It's obviously very distressing. My entire career has been affected by this war. I've lived most of my career with this war. I essentially did my research, my doctoral dissertation research in the 1970s in Afghanistan, and came back to finish my doctoral dissertation. By the time I finished in 1976, a year and a half, I was here in the United States on postdocs, and I was intending to go back to Afghanistan. But then the coup in 1978, the communist coup happened, and there was no country for me to go back to. So my entire career has been shaped by these wars, continuous wars. And my entire family is also there. I'm the only one. My wife is from Egypt, and I have children here, born and raised here in America. We have been to Afghanistan. In fact, in 2018, my family came with me to Afghanistan. I had six months of sabbatical leave. I spent it in Kabul and doing research there and also teaching at the American University of Afghanistan. So otherwise, my entire family are there. I mean, entire village full of them, and they're still there and they're suffering. So their suffering is my suffering. They call me and call friends, colleagues, people day and night. I really, my phone has been busy the entire time since the collapse of the Kabul government. People worrying about and asking how I could help them to get out of the country. And my thing is, leaving the country is not the solution. We have to resist. We have to fight. We have to do something. But they're telling me, while you're sitting in America saying this, can you see from our perspective in Kabul or in the villages? So it is painful. It is something that questions, I think, the core of my ethical being. In terms of what can I do? How can I help the situation? And the only thing I can do is really to plead with the international community that they have an obligation. We as Americans, we have invested a lot, but we have not managed that investment very well. We invested in thieves and kleptocrats instead of decent people. And I think that's something we as Americans have to ask our own government how our foreign policy is made. Anyone in this country care about how our foreign policy is made? Is there any discussion, any serious critical discussion of our foreign policy, especially towards the Middle East and Muslim countries and Central Asia? No, there is hardly any. Coined the term military-industrial complex and warned us that we have to essentially wean ourselves out of relying too much on making military weapons, because it'll make us go to wars, and it'll make us suffer in the long run. And those days are upon us. But we're from war to war to war to war, one war to the next war. We go to Afghanistan to war, and then we take it to Iraq, and we take it to Syria, we take it to Yemen, to Libya, and it goes on and on and on. Why? Why do we have to be at war all the time? I mean, why don't we ask this question from our own leaders, from our own political parties? And why is this not discussed in the media?
How would you sort of advise people living in Indiana to kind of help or reach out to their leaders if they want to get involved and help the situation, I guess?
This question has been asked to me over the last 20 years of this war, where I have been called by universities, by communities to speak on Afghanistan. It's often towards the end, what can we do? And I have expressed this concern that I fear that we care that our political leaders behave ethically within our own domestic concerns. I mean, look at what happened in New York. For a sexual scandal, a governor is forced to resign. Yes, it's wonderful. Why not? Unethical conduct should be questioned. But when have we questioned ethically the conduct of our foreign policy? And I've raised this question repeatedly because we don't care. We care only on domestic issues. We insist that our leaders act ethically. When it comes to foreign policy, we think they are deceiving us by saying, well, we are protecting the interest of the United States of America. But that interest of the United States of America is not your interest or my interest. It's the interest of multinational corporations who are indulged in producing war products. So why are we not asking? I mean, this is really something that I've spent in classroom. I teach one course called Post-Taliban Afghanistan and Global War on Terror, which really is a critical examination of our foreign policy in all these wars that we have been engaged in. And those students who take that class, and it's about 30 students who are allowed to enter the class, I will be teaching it for the last time next spring semester, 2022. And then I'll retire from classroom at least. I think I have had success in making those students think critically about these issues. But those are, maybe a few hundred students at the greatest. But this needs much larger forum for discussion. The recipe, I think, is that we as academics have to advocate for patriotic approach to analysis of our foreign policy and question when our policies are morally wrong to be corrected, and that we have responsibility to intervene with our own politicians, especially in the Senate, because they are the responsible body for our foreign policy, to question people who make foreign policy for us when they are wrong, when they botch it, that they should come to account. And that's where we are. That's what has happened to our foreign policy in Afghanistan, in all of this money that we've spent, in, of course, 2,400 Americans who died there, and 20,000 Americans who have been seriously injured, whom we have to care for decades to come. And the cost of that has to be borne. And of course, we're not, again, not concerned with the cost that the Afghans suffered. Millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people in Afghanistan have suffered in varieties of ways, not just being killed and maimed and injured, but also suffering from mental illness. Some statistics show that up to 60% or more of people of Afghanistan are suffering from some form of mental illness, which relates to this prolonged decades of war, the forever war.